Welcome everyone to Soulfully Yours. It's a brand new episode. Uh, I'm your host Humaira Naseem. Thank you for all your love and support that you have showered us with at Soulfully Yours. And books are my oxytocin. And after a very long time, I've come across a good book on business ethics, Spartan CEO. This book has such beautiful gems, and so we thought to have the real Spartan at our show. Uh, how are you doing, Dr. Corrie?
Very well. Thank you so much, Amanda. It's a pleasure to be with you. Hi, Soulfully Yours. Good to meet you all.
Dr. Corrie, he needs no introduction. He is leading his firm Paragon Consulting, making an impact around the world, and he has just traveled back, and we're so thankful for his presence here. Dr. Corrie, my first question is always, who is Corrie Block at soul level?
Oh, at a soul level?
Yeah.
Really just, I think probably I'm a 12-year-old boy that's trying to have as much fun as he can in the world and make as many friends as possible. And I think that's probably it. Like at a soul level, I really just want people to have do you remember the meaning that we used to have in life when we were kids?
Yeah.
Right? And you'd be running around. For me, it was on a BMX bike. I'd be riding my BMX bike down the street, wind in my hair, not caring about anything except maybe when to be home for dinner. And that was it. That was like all of life. And I just love that depth of meaning and that simplicity of life. And I really want people to have that experience as adults because our lives are so complex now.
And I think our children do not share the same experiences we had in our childhood.
my kids either. No, my kids are now.
It's a different world for them.
Yeah, we have 5 between us. So our kids are 21, 16, 7, and 4-year-old twins. And they're all have varying levels of digital competency, and they all have varying degrees to which they've built their relationships online. So yeah, I understand that it's different. And it's difficult. But I think with us as humans, we have a million years of history in building relationships like this, face to face, making eye contact, measuring micro expressions. And I miss that. And I lose a lot of that online.
Yeah, I think it's these days, children, they are more towards digital communication than face-to-face communication. And there's so much learning in face-to-face interactions and digital.
Well, I know for my son now, he's 21 years old. He's an adult, and he spent a good deal of his life online. And so I can tell he struggles sometimes interpersonally, but he's so much better than I am at interpreting text. Right? Whenever I get a text message, I can talk to him and say, Gabriel, what does this mean? And he'll look at it and go, oh, it means this, and he's so much better at interpreting the other, let's say 93% of communication with only the 7% of communication that is the text. So in that sense, he's got a strength that I don't have, but also a weakness that I don't have.
Yeah. So coming back to our the topic, are you a Spartan CEO? We'll be discussing the points, excellent points that you have written in the book. With the first one, I want to ask you, what is the difference between leadership and management?
Oh, good question.
And what is the significance of
it? Good question. Because look, this gets confused a lot. Okay, so when I ask people, what is the difference between leaders and managers? Typically, they'll say managers are evil and leaders are good, right? So there's this kind of dichotomy where people think that there's one bad side and one good side. There's a dark and the light, and the manager is dark and the leader is light. But take into consideration that every person in every company that has ever been above you in the organization chart is called a manager. It's not called a leader. So we've got 50 years of good management theory. And you start out as a junior manager, then a manager, then a senior manager, then like an executive level manager. And so all of those job titles are manager titles. And so we've associated our bad experiences with our bosses as managers, and therefore we've blanketed all managers as bad, right? Meanwhile, anybody that you would describe as a leader is somebody that you've chosen. You might not choose your manager, right? But you'll choose your leader. And so all of the leaders in your life, anybody that fits under that banner is going to be a good guy. right?
Exactly.
Or a strong woman, right? You don't choose leaders to follow that are bad leaders, because you're not an idiot. You're not going to make bad choices. So you choose good people as leaders, and bad people are forced on you as managers, and that's where the dichotomy comes from. But actually, that's a misnomer. Management and leadership are separate sets of skills, right? There's skill sets, and there's a lot of different definitions of what management is, what leadership is, and there's experts like John Maxwell, who was very early on describing management and leadership as different disciplines. And there's Henry Mintzberg, who thinks that management and leadership are not different disciplines, they're exactly the same. So there's even a lot of debate at the highest level of thought in leadership and management studies about where they overlap and how much they overlap. Personally, I define management as the stewardship of existing resources, and leadership as the stewardship of potential resources.
Yeah.
So a really good manager is somebody that you want to make the best use of what you have available to you today. So I tell all of the companies that work with me, if you're in a pinch, right? You're in a global pandemic, or sales are down, or something's going wrong, you push all of your power in the direction of your very talented managers, because they'll know exactly what can be done with the resources that you have available. But if you have some cash, if you're in expansion mode, if you've just got a bit of investment and you're looking to expand, push the power in the direction of your leaders, because they will waste money on R&D, finding that one thing that's going to be disruptive in the market. They will spend money on marketing. They will go out and take risks that you might not be able to afford all the time. So there's that difference between stewarding what you have available and stewarding the potential of what you can have in the future.
So as you mentioned that managers will always be the bad guys. So how to clear that image how could
we should just erase all of the business cards and just call people leaders. And then you'll realize after 4 or 5 years that you hate all of your leaders too, right? So we, in our organization, some organizations are doing that, right? They like to have leadership training programs. And then you realize that the people that are in the leadership training programs aren't themselves very talented leaders, and they're probably not that great of managers either. And they're not even really teaching leadership.
I really like that we are the ones who choose the leaders, because we get inspired and we decide we have whom to follow.
Now imagine you can choose your manager too.
And how's that?
Well, that's increasingly what's happening now. People are choosing their managers. You've heard the expression, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their managers. Okay, so that is increasingly becoming a focus of people when they're moving into a job, is to interview their manager, so that they end up with the right kind of influence in their lives. Because if you're going to spend half of your life under the influence of somebody who calls themselves a manager or a leader or a boss or whoever, a guide, coach, doesn't matter. You want to make sure that it's a good half, a meaningful half.
But as you mentioned, like in a world where a person has to run after bread and butter, does that person has a choice to choose a manager?
In most organizations, if you join the organization will tell you who your manager is, okay, as a title. But that doesn't make them a good manager or a bad manager. And it doesn't make them a good leader or a bad leader. What makes somebody a good manager is their ability to steward their existing resources very well. What makes them a good leader is their ability to steward potential resources very well. And that includes you. So if you, as a part of that organization, are a potential resource, a good leader as a manager isn't going to see you for who you are today. They're going to see you for who you are 3 years from now. The potential of what you can do. They're going to call you to be better and stronger and faster, and they're going to input into your life those skills and KPIs and encouragement to make sure that you become the best possible natural version of yourself in that working environment. So no, organizationally, most of the time people don't get to choose who their manager is, but you can always choose who your leader is, and you don't have to follow your manager.
So moving forward, my next question is, how can we build self-confidence?
Oh, this is a great question, because there's this misunderstanding about confidence as an innate trait, like a character trait, like you can be born with it. Like there's some people say that of me, like, oh, you're so confident, okay? But there's no such thing as a generally confident person. You're not born with it. It's not an innate character trait. It's a skill. All confidence is a skill. Okay, it's gained through risk and context. I'll give you an idea. Okay, so I'm very comfortable on stage. I love delivering keynote speeches. You put me in front of an audience of 4,000, 5,000 people, I'm very happy. I've got my little clicker. I've got my slides up there. I can command the stage, and I'm very happy in that environment. Lights, camera, action, no problem. But if you just change one little thing about that context, right? Like you take away my clicker and you give me a piano. I don't play piano. Right? Suddenly the context has changed. The environment is the same, audience is the same, lights, camera, action, stage, microphone, but now instead of slides, I have a piano. And the context has changed with just that one thing so dramatically that all of my confidence is gone. I don't play piano. I'm going to make a fool of myself, so I'm going to run away. Okay, so all of your confidence, including the confidence to talk, was learned, to walk was learned. At some point, you had to take your first steps. And they weren't glorious. You fell down, okay, but you didn't stay down. Could you imagine, actually? It'd be like when you think about confidence building as a child, could you imagine if like a 1-year-old stands up and then falls down, right, and then looks up at mom and dad and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, mom and dad. I failed. That's it. I'm going to be the only human that doesn't walk on 2 legs. I'm just going to crawl my way through life, and that's the way it's going to be."
So when is that guilt part comes inside the youth?
We learn that. We learn to fail. So real confidence is taking risk. And then once you've taken the risk, okay, there's no confidence without risk. If you're doing something, there's no risk of you failing, then you're not going to gain any confidence from it. So all confidence comes from taking a risk. Once you've taken that risk, there's 2 outcomes. There's winning, which is you actually succeed in whatever you're attempting, and learning, which is the information that you gain as a result of an unexpected or undesired outcome, like falling down when you're learning to walk. Okay, so your child falls down and they look up at you and they don't say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm never going to walk again, I failed." They stand up and they've realized, okay, this is not how I position my feet. I need to move my knees like this. I need to move my ankles like that. I need to balance on something like, okay, so they learn. And that's the natural state of humans when we're gaining confidence in any context. We learn to fail when the people around us whom we love and respect tell us to stay down. Because we have an undesired or unexpected outcome. And instead of learning and trying again, we listen to the voices of other people around us who are teaching us, just stay down. Maybe that's not for you. Maybe that's not your thing. And real confidence, all confidence comes from taking risk and either winning or learning. And if you learn, then you take the risk again, but you have more information this time. And you can continue to take that risk until you succeed or you stop trying.
Smaller. I liked the thing that you mentioned, to take smaller risks rather than big risks, because the chance of failure would be greater. And that would not boost the confidence. In fact, you will just get into that cycle of
and the magic number come out is 4%. Okay, so you want to think of whatever it is that you're doing that you want to gain more confidence in. You don't want to take a 20% risk, like do something 20% faster, stronger, smarter, than you've ever done before. You want to gain 4%, because if you think of it as like it's a 4% more difficult thing than I've ever done before, the chances are pretty good that you'll succeed, that you'll stretch to meet that 4%, and you'll gain the confidence that comes from that success. Okay, and it's not such a huge loss if you lose at 4% more than anything you've ever tried before. You can take that information, you can try again later. But if you're trying something that's 50% more difficult than anything you've ever done before, chances are much greater that you won't have the capacity or the competency to carry it off. And then you'll lose the confidence that might have come from a success. So 4%.
Yeah, 4% is, agreeable. Emma, are we recording on camera? Thank you. So you have written in your book that motivation is bullshit. I agree. I completely agree, because I failed at this so many times. It doesn't work. So I'm the test case for that.
Good.
It proves your point. So, and I love the point where you mentioned that the connection between success and discipline.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I really, I love those concepts. I love getting people outside of the idea of motivation, especially when we talk about employee motivation. We talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, and from the intrinsic motivators, and what's actually going to get people to do what they need to do or what we want them to do, right? And the fact is that when you have the initial urge to get something done, it's not a very big urge, and it won't last very long. It's a shot of dopamine in your brain, usually in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, just up here. When you get that shot of dopamine, you have between 5 and 40 seconds to stand up and start moving. Now, here's the horrible part. If you don't stand up and start moving in the direction of doing what it is that you're motivated to do, after only about 40 seconds, that first shot of dopamine will burn out, and your brain will give you a second hit of dopamine in the anterior insula of your brain, which is close to the risk avoidance center. And the reason we think that is from an evolutionary psychological perspective, those who do survive. Okay, so when you think, oh, I need to get something done, those who do more have more. Those who have more can survive better, right? It's a best practice for human survival. So your brain says, yeah, good job. You're thinking about doing something. Okay, we'll reward you from that. And if you actually do it, you'll get another reward. You get more rewards the more you do. But if you just sit on the couch for another 30 seconds, 40 seconds, you wait for that first hit of dopamine to wear off, your brain is smarter than you. Okay, and it's 1 million years old. This machine is 1 million years old. So it says, Humera, you didn't actually get off the couch. So you must be avoiding the risk associated with doing whatever you thought you were supposed to do. Good job. Good job. And that gives you another hit of dopamine, which is very pleasurable and highly addictive, but in the wrong part of your brain. So you can actually become addicted to not feeling like doing it. And you can become addicted to avoiding the risk associated with going for a run or getting some exercise or eating healthy or finishing the report or writing your book or whatever it is that you want to do. If you just avoid doing it, your brain will reward you for avoiding getting it done.
Yeah. And recently I was just reflecting that if your motivation is not to feel bad, the moment you'll start feeling good, your motivation to do the thing would go.
That's right. Yeah, because you feel the dopamine anyway.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't have to actually get it done.
Yeah.
You'll get 2 hits of dopamine for thinking about going for a run and then not going.
Yeah.
You don't actually have to go for a run. Your brain will make you feel good for avoiding the risk of running. Yeah, it's an amazing look. Humans are wonderful, right? We are wonderful, weird, incredible creatures, and we are definitely hackable. Like, we can understand this. There's great psychology and great neuroscience behind why we do the things we do and why we don't do the things that we don't do. But I guarantee you, like, those little hits of dopamine, they're important to get us going, right? But getting us going is not going to keep us going. I don't know if you've ever run a marathon, but it's hard. And the first 100 meters is the only time when you're really, truly happy. Okay, at least that's my experience when I run my Spartan races. It's like I'll get out there and you get all excited, and then they do the countdown: 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And boom, and everybody's off, and you're running, and it's super exciting. And then 100 meters later, you're like, okay, still going. And then a kilometer later, you're like, wow, okay, still going. 5 kilometers later, you're like, yeah, I really just need a donut right now. Can I just stop and do something else? And that's when you realize that it's not motivation that's going to get you through what needs to be done in order to accomplish anything that's really worthwhile. Motivation might get you started, but only discipline is going to get you finished.
And how to have that discipline? Any tips that you would like to give?
Discipline is a skill, okay? Discipline is the ability to choose your behavior regardless of how you feel. So you feel angry, but you talk calm. Okay, that kind of thing. You feel like not doing anything, but you do something anyway. You feel like taking a nap, but you end up going to the gym. Okay, that's discipline. Discipline is the ability to choose your behavior.
Not based on emotions.
Not based on how you feel, not based on emotions, right? Because, like I said, you can very literally become addicted to not feeling like doing things. Discipline gets through that addiction and allows you to do things, even if you don't feel like it.
Yeah. So it's like you need to train your brain that way.
Absolutely, yeah. You have a very strong gear here. Your prefrontal cortex is capable of getting you off the couch even after the 40 seconds is up. Okay, making that decision and picking your body up and moving it in the direction of what needs to get done, so that you can meet your own goals. Right? It's this. You should be focused on meeting your own goals and fulfillment in your life. But once you know that what you want to do is going to contribute to that long-term fulfillment and meaning in your life, then discipline is what actually gets it done. I think we rely way too much on happiness now, right? Happiness is when I think about doing something and my brain rewards me for it. Happiness is when I don't do it and my brain rewards me for it. That's happiness. It's dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. Okay, those are the neurochemicals of happiness. Every human everywhere in the world experiences happiness in exactly the same way. It's that combination, right? Some combination of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, maybe norepinephrine, okay? Sometimes adrenaline, but that's about it. Like, it's really very, very simple.
As simple as it sounds, it's not easy to balance.
But happiness, it burns out really quickly, right? You want to be happy? Get a Big Mac. And any combination of sugar, fat, and salt is going to make you happy, right? Your body is designed to be happy when you have any major combination of sugar, fat, and salt, but that's not going to make you fulfilled. Fulfilled are the things that are really, really difficult. You know, finishing a degree, starting a business, having a child, raising a child is hard work. You're a mom, right? It's hard. And I can tell you, like, with 5 kids, I love my kids, okay? But there's a good deal of time when I have not been happy raising them. It's work.
I can relate.
Look, let's be honest about it, okay? It's hard work, but
it's not easy.
Writing your book is hard work. It's not always happy, but at the end, it's fulfilling. And that's the same with every major goal. Exactly. Most of the goals that I have that have been really worthwhile to me, really valuable to me, did not make me happy doing them. I wasn't happy sitting up at 2:00 in the morning researching my PhD. Nobody is there telling me I'm doing a good job. Go for it, Corrie. Go for it, Corrie. No, it's just me and a lamp and a stack of books at 2:00 in the morning. Again, my family is asleep. Again, I've got to report to work at 9 a.m. Again, and I'm choosing my behavior, and it's hard. That's what makes it fulfilling.
As you say, you're choosing the behavior. You having an internal locus of control. What about the people who do not have, who have their locus of control outside of them? What should they do?
It's a very good question, actually, and it's a big concern of mine, because I think more people would be more happy and more fulfilled if they were able to recognize that they had an external locus of control and shift it. And for those of you who don't know what that means, like, a locus of control is your idea of where control of the world is coming from. So if you think of yourself as always reacting to things going on around you, I'm the victim of my life. If only the world would treat me better, if only my boss would treat me better, if only my spouse would treat me better, then you have an external locus of control, because your experience of the world is based on your reaction to things that are happening that are outside of your control. The only thing we can control is ourselves, right? And even then, sometimes we find that difficult, right? But for people to wake up and recognize that, okay, you can't control what's happening to you, but you can control your experience of it. That's an internal locus of control. I can experience my boss differently. I can experience my spouse differently. I can curate my experience of my children, my neighbors, my friends, the people on my hockey team. I can curate my experience.
And I think it's all about perceptions.
Right? Of course. Yes, of course. And then once you realize that you have the ability to create your experience of the world, then your behavior changes. When your behavior changes, the world reacts to you differently. So instead of you reacting to everything that the world is doing, now the world is changing the way that it's behaving in reaction to you, because you've decided to behave differently. And that's what an internal locus of control is that understanding that you have the ability and the right to curate your experience of the world.
So, like extrinsic motivation or motivation coming from outside, you have mentioned in your book that recognition-based programs are a double-edged sword.
It's true.
and it's true. It's fact that when you recognize a person, a single person, or one or two from the team,
Mhm.
the other feel left out, and rather than increasing the efficiency and productivity of the overall team, in the longer run, you are demotivating
That's right.
people. And,
Yeah, so creating
so
all-stars in business
yeah.
actually reduces team level performance.
So how to motivate or appreciate the hard workers while not, where's the balance? Well,
Yeah, I've done a really great job of
Mhm.
research on this. The axiom that I use is that carrots and sticks turn people into donkeys. Okay?
Yeah.
Use carrots and sticks, all of your employees will become donkeys, and then don't be surprised when they behave like donkeys, right? Then they won't do anything unless you're either hitting them or bribing them. Because, shocker, you've trained them to expect to be either hit or bribed.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's all you're using is carrots and sticks, then expect your people to stop moving the minute they're not being hit and the minute they're not being bribed. Okay, you create that dependency. So HR departments really need to start moving toward intrinsic motivation for behavior, and that became the subject of this. This is the Business's Personal book, is helping people to find their own reason for being in the job that they're in, because it's not a mistake.
But don't you find that many people do not work what they love? And when they do not work what their passion is, how will they develop that intrinsic motivation?
Okay, this is a very good question, because we don't necessarily have to change what we do in order to love our work. We can love the work we're in now. And I know that's difficult for some people to accept, because I know some of you are like, I'm never going to love my boss. My boss is horrible. I hate him. Okay, right? But if you change your experience of your work, then you may end up loving what you do. And here's the thing. Most humans, most of the time, we don't care much about what we do. What we do, accounting or HR work or building things with bricks, that doesn't matter so much. What matters to us is who we're with and why we're there. Those things really matter. What is low-level importance compared to who we're with and why we're there? Because even if you were doing something that you love, if you were surrounded by people you hate, you're not going to love what you're doing. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how awesome it is.
True.
But if you're surrounded by people who are supportive of you, who accept you, who listen to you and value your opinion, that you feel like you belong to them, you will perform better, and you will live longer, and you will have a more healthy life, and you'll be more connected to your work, no matter what that work is. And people want to connect with who they're with, and they want to connect with why they're there. And we, first of all, I mean, at a very base level, you are in your job because you believe that this is the best, fastest, most effective way for you to reach your personal goals, because you're not an idiot. And if there was a better way for you to reach your personal goals, you'd be doing that. Okay, so trust yourself, empower yourself in your job. You chose this. This is
I think it requires at least some level of consciousness and awareness.
Of course.
Reflecting why we are doing what we're doing.
Yeah, take a step back. Take a step just a little bit out of your skin and go, you know what? I'm not an idiot. Okay? Every decision I've ever made has led me to this job. And I am putting half of my life into this economic project every day. And I want it to be a meaningful half. So admit those things to yourself. Okay? I led me here. And I want it to be more meaningful than it is. What can I do to make it more meaningful? Do I have to change my job, or can I just change my mind? If you start, I guarantee you, if you start clarifying your personal goals for your personal life, and you recognize the part that this particular social role right now plays in you achieving that over the course of your life, that will help you a tremendous amount, because then you're connecting not just with what you're doing, but why you're there. That's super important. And the second thing is connect with the people around you, right? Humans have been humans for a very long period of time. And all of the people around you want exactly the same thing as you do. They want to be heard, understood, accepted, and loved. That's it. That's the magic formula.
Yeah.
If you hear, understand, accept, and love the people around you, they will have no choice but to start doing that with you too. That will improve your experience at work, and you don't have to change your job. You just have to change your mind.
And that's what human connection is all about.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, look,
that's the magic formula.
Yes, we've been doing this for thousands of years, right? We've survived by building teams. We've called them families, tribes, nations, empires, now companies. Companies are like 350 years old. I mean, we've got some older, but the majority of our companies are about 350 years old. This is a recent thing. but it's still just people sending, it's a bunch of families, each of whom send a representative of their family every day to play an economic game on team with other players. Hopefully, if that team keeps winning in their game, then they bring in enough resources that all of the families get fed, all of the kids get educated, all of the parents get cared for. There's food on the plate, gas in the car, and a vacation at the end of the year. Like that's what we've been doing this for 1,000,000 years. This is our best practice. This is not different. We've just forgotten what's really important about why we do it and how to create meaning in those social roles. Somebody's got to sweep the floor,
Yeah.
But if they love the people that they're sweeping with and they know why they're there,
Definitely.
then sweeping the floor doesn't matter.
Exactly. Very, very well said. However, if does it sound too idealistic, intrinsic motivation? Because at times you have to, or there is a need to encourage or appreciate people, the hard workers in the team.
Sure.
And then, as we mentioned about the recognition-based programs, they
Mhm.
demotivate. So, what is other than intrinsic motivation? How to, because obviously we work for monetary benefits as well, for other reasons as well. So, how to encourage them without demotivating?
Yeah, look, I think people should be rewarded for their work, and I think good work should be rewarded well.
We live in a world of duality, right?
Yes.
So, how to overcome that perception wherein the other people start feeling left out or demotivated?
Yeah, and the last thing I want is for us to be giving out participation medals, because we know that demotivates people too, right? When I was a kid, and I had sports day in my high school, we'd have sports day and we do competitions and things. If I didn't come in first, second, or third place, I wasn't going home with a medal. They didn't give you a certificate of participation. There's no participation medal that's, blue and everybody gets a medal. That didn't exist when I grew up. And as a result, those medals meant something. So when I won one, I brought it home. I was proud of it. Now they give you a medal just for showing up. Right? All you have to do is be present and you get a medal. And I think that really devalues the achievement. So I believe in fair work for fair pay. Right? I think if you have earned a bonus at the end of the year, you should get your bonus. Your family should benefit from the increased resources that you were able to bring in to your economic community. Your family should benefit from that. But I don't think it's helpful that we have like all-star trumpeting people on stage, with a huge banner saying this person outperformed everybody else. Psychologically, that's damaging to the team, and then the team underperforms in the following quarter.
Yeah.
So
it's like a very unhealthy kind of competition.
Yeah, I think we need to create some balance there where we are rewarding people for their exceptional performance. But the other thing that most people don't take into consideration is that there's been a significant shift in the way that people receive praise over the last 20 years, and that's a result of social media. So right now, if somebody says, hey, good job, that's not really meaningful to me, especially if they do it in public. If somebody says, oh, you're so strong, you're so smart, good job, Corrie, and they give me a pat on the back on a stage in front of 1,000 people, that's to me nearly meaningless, because it's just like getting a like on Facebook. It's just like getting a comment on your LinkedIn channel, right? Somebody says, oh, this is a great article, Corrie, good job. It's public praise, which it's not really valuable anymore. But you know what's really valuable? Private praise.
Exactly.
So if you take those, like we were talking about our kids growing up in a digital age, if you take our kids aside and they're with somebody that they would consider a mentor, a leader, a coach, or a manager, that somebody whose respect they want as a human being, and that person says, listen, I'm not going to make a big deal of this in front of the company. I'm going to make a big deal of this in front of you. I so much appreciate all of your efforts. We've been able to accomplish this and this and this, and I recognize what you've done. There's going to be a little extra in your paycheck at the end of the month, and I'm going to give you an extra 5 days off during the year, right? There's not going to be a huge plaque or anything like that. I just want you to know how much I value all of your efforts, and I don't want to embarrass you in front of everybody else, and I don't want all of them to be embarrassed in front of you. But you need to know that I recognize this. I value this. Can you imagine what would happen to our people and to our companies if that was the kind of conversation that took place privately?
I'm loving it. This idea is, if you see the social media that digital age that you are mentioning, and our children are
Mm-hmm.
exposed to it, it's all about hits, likes, following,
Yeah,
and it's all
exactly.
meaningless. I mean, it's not fulfilling or meaningful enough to
Right.
run after that.
Yeah, exactly. And all of that etiquette is a very thinly veiled lie anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Etiquette is a thinly veiled lie.
Mhm.
That's what it is. It's me performing for you the way that I think you want me to perform for you in society, and
Exactly.
not being authentic. Of course, if we were all totally
I'm
authentic,
pleasing you so
yeah.
that you can, like me.
Right, but that's what keeps society going, is this
Yeah.
thinly veiled lie that this is the way that we should all behave.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I dress a certain way, I posture myself a certain way, I use certain words and I don't use other words, because that's etiquette. And etiquette is a thinly veiled lie about who I really am, so that society can function. Because if we were all totally honest with each other all of the time, society would break down very quickly. So we need that lie. We need it.
To a certain extent.
Yes, and now we
to
have
be disciplined enough. Otherwise, there won't be discipline.
Exactly right. Yes.
Like, for example, in military, you have to follow the rules.
Yes, exactly.
There is a culture. There's a etiquettes that you have to follow.
Yeah.
And otherwise, there won't be that standard way of.
That's right. Society breaks down without that lie.
So. Yeah, so I think the balance is very important.
Definitely.
In these things.
Yeah,
That
definitely.
there's no either or, that you can go with any of.
That's right.
That's but the balance is very important. Moving forward, you talked about organizational discipline, and you mentioned about bias towards thinking.
Yes.
Wherein you collect so many you want
so much data, information.
Yeah, exactly. So. And then there is bias towards actions, where you just have to do something better than not doing. So where is that balance between the two?
Okay.
Thinking and action.
So the shift between what we value and what's effective has happened just in the last 25 years, let's say. So in the 20th century, a bias toward thinking was very helpful, because we didn't have the same access to communication and the speed of information at that time. So it was very helpful to spend a good deal of time doing research, figuring out what the right answer was before you invested in something, doing your feasibility studies, doing your valuations and all of that, right? Yeah. But that changed. That changed with the speed of information and the speed of disruption and change in the market, in almost every industry. And so now what we're finding is you don't have time to do the feasibility study. You have to make a pretty good guess. You make a pretty good guess with about 80% of the available information, and you hope that you don't break too many things on your way through. And that's where the whole move fast, break things, right? The agile axiom from the Silicon Valley, move fast and break things, because the cost of breaking things is far lower than the cost of not moving fast.
And I think some people have not made that shift yet from thinking to action.
That's right. Yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously, I'm not suggesting that you should stop thinking. That's not a good thing. The other way that you can do this is to augment your thinking so that thinking becomes faster. Okay, so I want you to think, but you have to move. Okay, if you have to sacrifice on thinking or movement, sacrifice on thinking and take the step. Because you can steer, right? There are very few things in the world now where we're talking about the ready, aim, fire fallacy, right? People are afraid of that. I'm gonna fire before I aim, and then I'm not gonna hit my target. Well, there are very few things in the world that actually operate that way. Most things are ready, accelerate, steer. In which case you can,
at least in actions where there is less risk involved, you can do that.
Even actions where there's more risk involved, as long as that risk doesn't happen in 1 second, right? You can put your foot on the gas and steer while you're moving quickly. You can still steer, and that comes from design thinking. So design thinking is that idea that you're constantly iterating the next best thing. But keep in mind that design thinking is 1 million years old too. You are the latest iteration of 10,000 generations of successful R&D. You're here, you exist, Humera, because all of your ancestors survived.
Exactly.
They survived and kept their kids alive long enough to have kids. That's how you exist. Because the ones that didn't iterate, they're not here. Right?
Yeah, that's a beautiful example of our existence is based on this.
Yes, absolutely. And so you don't have to be afraid to break things. In fact, you should embrace the breaking things. Breaking things is normal. Not moving fast, that's not normal.
breaking things would be like if you have a fear of failure or you are a perfectionist, you will lock yourself in
It
these
comes right
directions.
back to that original principle that we talked about, building confidence, right? The baby doesn't fall down and then stop walking. The baby doesn't give up. The baby iterates. It learns how not to do it, eliminates that tactic, stands up and does it again. The baby moves fast and breaks things because they need to walk.
Yeah.
So if we
If you
take
want
that,
to do something, we have to become a child again.
yeah, and I know my children break a lot of things. So I don't know about your kids, but when my kids move fast, they definitely break stuff. I just think we need a lot more of that, less fear of failure and more fear of not learning. We need to be able to pick up and move quickly.
I think these reframes and these are so very important.
Thank you.
Wonderful statement that we need to have fear of not learning.
Yes.
And that's I think learning should be primary.
Sure.
It should be at the front of priority for us.
Yeah, I think we need to recognize that learning is the natural outcome.
Yeah.
Failure is a choice. It's a conscious choice to ignore the learning opportunity that came from an unexpected outcome.
Yeah. Wonderful, beautiful. So you mentioned in your book about Tough Mudder and Spartan.
Yes,
right?
my races.
You said you can't run the Tough Mudder like a Spartan, but you can definitely run the Spartan like a Tough Mudder. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, look, for those who don't know, the Spartan race and the Tough Mudder race are obstacle course races. So in a Spartan race, it'd be, 5, 10, 15, sometimes 25 kilometers long. And every 500 meters or so, you have to do something. You have to climb up a hill carrying a bucket of rocks, or you have to climb over walls, or you have to swim through a wadi or something, right? There's an obstacle. And it's the same in the Tough Mudder, but the obstacles in the Tough Mudder are so much bigger. So if you're running a Tough Mudder, you have to run with a team. It requires 5 people to finish all of the obstacles that are along that route. So you can run a Spartan race all by yourself because all of the obstacles are designed to be completed by one person. But you can't do that as a Tough Mudder. If you run all by yourself in a Tough Mudder, you're not going to finish the race. It's not possible. You have to partner with people in order to do it. And I think it's a really good illustration there that the races that we're running now, the obstacles that we're facing now, are Tough Mudder obstacles in business. These are not the kinds of races that you can run alone or win alone. And so the idea that you're in this by yourself, that you have to fix your hustle, you've got to do this, that it's a fallacy. It's never been true.
And one thing that you mentioned about a Tough Mudder race where a person comes and uses the team and runs away.
I actually had that. I had that happen.
So how to tackle these situations?
Yeah, look, I had, we were on a ramp. There was like 5 of us who built this human ladder to climb up to the top of a ramp. And there was this 6th guy, we don't know who he was. He ran up us. So very literally stood on my back, stepped on my head to get to where he was going. And then he just took off. And I was angry. I was instantly angry. And it reminded me of, there's people in your company that do this, right? They stand on the heads of other people. They use other people's work to make themselves look good. And then they just keep running. They don't turn around and reach down and help the other people up, even once they get to the top. They're off on their own. And that's what I mean by you can't run a Tough Mudder like a Spartan. The games that we're in, the economic games that we're playing now, automotive games and transportation games and food and beverage games, like all of these games that we're playing, these are team games. Right? Could you imagine any single football team where even the all-star runner said, yeah, I don't really need you guys. I can win this on my own. Could you imagine Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi standing up to their team and say, you know what, you guys take a break. I've got this. Right? It's not possible. It can't be done. And yet we think of our economic games as things that we're playing by ourselves. I have to win in my job. I have to win politically with all of these people around me. No, we're not competing with the people around us. We're competing with the people around us. And once we recognize that this, for better or worse, this is your team. Okay? Learn each other's strengths and weaknesses. Amplify each other's strengths, cover for each other's weaknesses with your strengths, and play as a team, because all of your families and all of their futures, they depend on that. And that's
how
really
to tackle that kind of person.
If you have somebody if you have a Spartan running a Tough Mudder, Well, okay, so people like me hunt them down. So typically a company will ask me to come in. I'll do leadership training, and during that leadership training, one of the background narratives is, okay, who's a Spartan, right? Who's not playing like a team player, who's not sharing resources, who's siloing out their department or their business unit, and it's up to me to identify who they are. And then I usually, because I really hate kicking people out of their economic communities, so I don't believe in firing people immediately. I usually prescribe an intervention, some coaching, some training, a little bit of paradigm shifting. And if after 6 months we can't save that person, then yeah, for the sake of the team and the World Cup, we got to get rid of that one player.
And in many cases, it's not about the person may be having some psychological issues or maybe a lack of trust
I think
that could develop that kind of
I think
mindset.
it's mostly the lack of trust is a symptom of insecurity, because trust requires you to be transparent with other people, and that requires you to be secure in what you're being transparent about. So the people who hold all of their cards to their chest and keep all of the information close, and they don't share with their teams, and they don't share cross departmentally, and they build their own silos, these are very insecure people. They're fundamentally insecure, and they're also very easy to find. It's not difficult to identify who they are in organizations, and it's not difficult to calculate how much they're costing the organization by being that way. But it is fundamentally an insecurity, and the symptom of that insecurity is a lack of trust.
So how to deal with that? Like, trust is a very precious resource, and unfortunately it is a scarce resource in the corporate culture. So how to what is trust? Firstly, would you define what trust is?
Yeah, trust is made up of a single compound in your brain. It's called oxytocin, and oxytocin is the only way that any human has ever experienced trust and belonging, love. It's all oxytocin. Okay. So if you can get people to produce oxytocin in their brains when they're with each other, they will trust each other. Actually, there's been a lot of experiments on people, and if you artificially pump oxytocin charged air into the air of a room, people become more generous with each other. Yes, it's true. Okay. And so oxytocin is created through the 5 love languages, actually. And if you've read if you've read the book, it's a very helpful model for management, not just romance, right? Like if I take those 5 love languages and translate them into a language that managers and leaders in organizations will understand. But basically it's touch, acts of service, gifts, that's right, words of affirmation, right? So what was it? Trust, acts of service, and quality time. Quality time is, yes. Yeah. So if you take those 5 love languages and translate them into the work environment, quality time can mean, as a manager, you bring somebody in, you spend 10 minutes talking to them about their family. That's quality time. That produces oxytocin in there.
And that produces a connection.
100%, yeah. And that's what I use, like when I talked about the interventions that I typically do with managers who are very siloed and very insecure. I will spend time with them, and I will express all 5 of the love languages until I figure out which one actually is breaking them down. And I will hammer that one until they feel heard, understood, accepted, and loved by me first. And once they have that, then their ability to trust in the organization again starts to pick up, because they feel more secure because they have my acceptance.
I simply love the way you have connected the 5 love languages with trust.
Oh, thank you.
That's I think is, if you work on those 5 things, that connection, that oxytocin, that thing would be in the environment.
Absolutely.
And what do you think, how much we have achieved in present day work culture?
I think we've done very well over the last 10 years in reframing organizational dynamics and organizational behavior as human rather than systemic. Right? So we did a lot of work in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, 1950s, 60s, and 70s on the shareholder supremacy movement and systems thinking and process design to try and create the most efficient human systems that there are. What we realized in the early 2000s and now through the last decade is that all of those things are going to break down, because people are not machine parts. And it doesn't matter how good your science is.
Yeah.
People are messy. We're weird and wonderful and creative and happy, and then sad and depressed, and sometimes mean, and sometimes all on the same day. Like, and you can't plan for that. So you have to have a degree in psychology as well as process in order to understand how human systems work. And we have done a lot of jobs, or a lot of work, I think, in the social sciences, especially in management sciences, of understanding how humans work, what's necessary, which is why my concentration over the last few years on evolutionary psychology and neurosciences has led to some incredible new ideas for how organizations can structure themselves. Because it's just better when we treat each other as humans rather than cogs in a machine, or parts in a well-crafted watch. We had this idea in the 50s that if we just figured out how everybody works, it would work like a machine, and it doesn't. We are messy, horrible, wonderful creatures.
One thing that you mentioned in the book, and that was about male and female are equal but not same.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I loved this because it allows for me as a woman, or in general, to embrace our feminism.
Sure, of course.
Or femininity, rather than proving ourselves by being masculine enough to
Right.
prove our worth. So I think this is a very beautiful concept that you have mentioned in your book. Would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. Look, I don't know if it makes me a feminist or an egalitarian or complementarian.
Leave the labels.
I don't understand all of the labels, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
What I do understand is how to make money. Okay. And I understand that, the science is very clear that those organizations that are pursuing gender balance on decision-making bodies in their organizations are making more money. They're more market profitable. And there's a number of studies now. So we've identified that. And the reason I think this is because fundamentally men and women think differently. We think differently because our brains are actually wired differently. Male humans have more connections within the right and left hemispheres of our brain than women have. And women have way more connections between the left and right hemispheres of their brains than men have. So if you if you're talking to a man, right? If there's a man having a conversation, it's a bit like watching a rope be tied, right? We pick a topic, we talk about cars, and we talk about cars, and we talk about cars, and we just weave that rope. And then as soon as everybody's finished saying everything they need to say about cars, then they tie a knot in it, and then they talk about sports, and they talk about sports. So we think fundamentally differently. Women talk like in spider webs, right? Like I saw this wedding dress on Instagram the other day. Oh, my cousin got married. Oh, did she get married in the Seychelles? No, but I went to the Seychelles, right? 5 weeks ago. Oh, where do you stay? At this Marriott hotel. Oh, we have a Marriott over here, and then somehow it builds this incredibly elegant web through the conversation. So if you just have to listen to conversations between men and women to realize that we think very differently. In fact, women and men use different areas of the brain to solve the same cognitive problems. So we know that now. We also know that your advantage, by the way, is on oxytocin. So we've talked about trust and belonging in the workplace. Women have way higher natural levels of oxytocin than men have, and way more oxytocin receptors in their brain than men have. You're just better at that currency. You have a higher natural balance in that currency, and you're able to be more generous with it, and you're able to see it better than we are. So there's significant advantages, I think, to having gender balance in decision-making bodies like committees, work groups, teams, executive committees, boards of directors, because if you don't have that gender balance, then you're throwing away the only free lunch there is in decision-making, and that is diversity. The only free lunch in finance is diversification. The only free lunch in decision-making quality is diversity. The more diverse kinds of input you have, the better you can see the problem that you're tackling, and the better of a decision you can make. And having men and women balance each other out helps us as humans, as a human team, to see the problem better.
This makes me realize that, but then this research can divide, like these are certain professions that men can do because they have a different kind of brain. and these are the professions that women can do. Wouldn't that create that divide wherein
No,
there would be?
okay, so I understand where that tendency comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Women can do those professions as women in those professions. I think the fallacy is when we expect a man to step into a woman's profession and do it like a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we expect a woman to step into a traditionally man's profession and do it like a man, they're not. They're going to think differently. So if I'm stepping into a traditionally feminine role, like say a nurse or a teacher, something like that,
You still do it like
I'm going to do it like a man. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to think differently. I'm going to behave differently. I'm going to operate differently in that role than a woman would. And so egalitarianism or equity in that sense really has to show respect for the gender differences or the sex differences between males and females, because we're going to approach the same problems from different angles, and we're going to come up with different solutions as a result. So I don't think it's a matter of men shouldn't be doing women's jobs or women shouldn't be doing men's jobs. I just think we should drop the expectation that a female CEO is going to behave like a male CEO. They're not.
I think this concept has ended the gender war that had been going in the past.
Yeah, it's still going on, right? Look, so keep in mind, we've got 1 million years of evolutionary history, right? And women have only been able to vote for about 120 years in the first world. Like, we're not that mature yet. We've only just woken up to the fact that we're hyper immature in our ability to deal with the differences between the sexes and other inequalities and other diversity and inclusion considerations. We've only just woken up to the idea that, maybe we're not that smart. Maybe we haven't been fair. Maybe we haven't been as good to each other as we could be. And I think there's a lot of room for us to learn still.
And that's how learning is so important.
But we as a human race are that child falling down, learning how not to do it, and then standing up again. And I think there's a lot of hope to be found in that. We're not finished maturing yet. This isn't the pinnacle of human civilization, right? We're still growing, we're still learning. And we recognize as we get older and as the next generation comes up that there have been inequities that we've tolerated in our past because we were blind to them or ignorant of them. And those were not fair at that time. And we can't fix everything in a day, but maybe we can fix it in a year. Yeah. Maybe we can fix it in 10 years. And some things maybe we can only fix in 100 years. But we're getting smarter at recognizing our own biases, heuristics, and inequities from the past, and working on ways to make them better. Because I think, look, at the end of the day, if you have better, stronger decision-making bodies in your organization, you're going to make more money.
Yeah.
And if there's more money in the pot, then everybody's kids get educated, everybody's dreams happen, everybody's cars have gas in them, everybody goes on their vacation at the end of the year, everybody retires and lives a good, healthy
life. The world would be a better place.
Yeah, I think so.
So as you mentioned about vacations, tell us how important vacations and breaks are to increase employees' productivity.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of research on this as well. I think more important than vacation is proper rest. So we should think of vacation as a kind of rest and rest as a strategy or a tactic within strategy. You have to be resting because you're not an infinite being, right? We're not gods, we're not prophets. We don't have an unlimited amount of time or energy. We have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of energy, and our bodies, these physical machines here, they require repair. Yeah. And when we sleep, they repair, and when we rest, they repair, and when we take time off, they become more creative. And there's all these benefits that happen for organizations when they encourage their people to sleep properly. Actually, I have some of this in Spartan CEO too. If you get 2 nights sleep of less than 6 hours, 2 nights in a row, your productivity will go down by 12.1%, and it will be extended over a period of 6 days, even if you start sleeping properly on the 3rd night. There's a cost to be paid in productivity. And I've actually given the calculation in the book for how to figure out how much bottom line money your company is losing if one of your executives has a big weekend out, Yeah. So I advocate in the book for, we should not only not be celebrating workaholism, but we should be rewarding people who are sleeping consistently 7 hours a night. If we get sleep trackers on our executives and say, hey, you know what, maintain an entire year of 7-hour sleep nights. We're going to give you a bonus at the end of the year because your decision-making quality goes up. That means the leverage of your decisions across the entire organization goes up, and we're going to make more money as a result.
The idea sounds good, but Dr. Corrie, tell us how practical it is that as an employee, if I say I want to rest or relax, and then there is this superhuman kind of employee who takes over when I am resting and says that, oh, I'm going to do your work and take the light and trying to prove himself or herself more efficient.
Right.
So how, then again, the teamwork, the trust, the fact, where is that balance? Where is the trust that if I leave my place, nobody's gonna come and try to outshine and override me?
Well, people might, but your trust isn't based on those individual people. It's based on the entire organization and your relationships with people around you. See, I want to be a part of a team that's strong enough to survive without me.
Because realistically speaking, there are work cultures where this happens. And when this happens, people do not take considerable rest, or even if they are sick, they have to work to prove themselves, to prove their worth, so that nobody takes their place.
That's a fear culture.
It's insecurity, it's fear. So how to overcome that kind of culture, the work culture?
I think connect with the people around you. Fundamentally, that comes from
because
the insecurity.
in this kind of culture, not just one person is suffering, everybody's suffering because they have to prove themselves, otherwise
I think
kicked out.
The key is to trust the people around you, and in order for you to have that trust, you have to connect with them. Right? You have to connect with them. Look, every team that I've been on, if you can't survive without me, then I'm not that great of a leader. And I tell that to every manager, every leader, every executive that steps into my training programs. They're always freaking out about their phones, right? And as a trainer, as an executive trainer, one of the most difficult things to do is to get a CEO to turn their phone off for 6 hours. That is a heartbreak, right? Like, that is very difficult. But I'm telling my CEO clients, look, if your company can't function for 6 hours without you, you're not that good of a CEO. If you as a manager don't lead a team that's strong enough that it can function without you for 3 or 4 days, you're just not that good of a manager.
The other mindset is that if it's working without you, they don't need you. So that's an insecurity, right?
Yeah, but we did from every other team-based activity on the planet. Let's go back to the football team, for example. The football team should be able to function and win without any single member of that team playing that day. That's how the team works. The team has to be able to function with any single or 2 or 3 of its members even gone. And then those members come back, and maybe another member is out, because you're always building a team that's strong enough to handle the frailty of humanity, right? We don't have prophets, gods, or superhumans on our teams. And so we have to be expected to break down from time to time. Sometimes we get sick, sometimes we get tired, sometimes we get slow. And then that's when we count on our economic teams around us to pick up and move forward. And then we do that for them when they need a break, when they need to rest, we pick up for them. And that's the way that humanity has been working for the last million years.
That would build that trust, or that in that way, every person would get the desired amount of rest and relaxation. That's so much needed for mental wellness.
If you have a manager in your organization that is refusing to take vacation time because they're convinced that their business unit cannot function without them, fire them.
Excellent. Okay, so our next question, and that's my most
we call
favorite.
that a control risk, and I have a financial formula for that.
Well said. I hope it's reaching the people who need to hear this.
I hope so too.
Wonderful. So my most favorite question, what is a flow state?
Flow state is actually it's the subject of my next book, is going to be on flow state, because there's so much research about it now, and very little of it is actually geared toward managers in existing organizations. A flow state is a neurological state in which your prefrontal cortex turns off, okay, and you're doing all of your calculations in the back matter of your head, and you lose track of your time, yourself, your will, You lose track of all of the narratives about yourself, all of those nagging things like you're good enough, you're smart enough, and people like you, or you're too fat, too stupid, too old. Like all of those positive and negative narratives, they're gone. And you can be very, very productive in very short periods of time. Plus, it's highly addictive and highly pleasurable, right? So you in a flow state, typically you'll get a cocktail of dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, norepinephrine, and anandamide, it's a lot of fun. Let's just call it that. Like your drug production center goes crazy, and you can move very, very quickly because you're not hampered by the limitations of the prefrontal cortex.
So all the conditioning that you have.
That's right. Yeah. So if you imagine, sometimes people who do coding, engineers, computer engineers, they'll have their headphones on for like 8 hours. They don't eat, they don't sleep, they don't feel tired, they don't feel hungry, they don't feel thirsty, they don't feel anything. They're just in the zone, right? And if you've ever had somebody describe what they're doing as in the zone, that's flow. That's the flow state. And then they come out of the zone. They instantly have to go to the bathroom. They're starving. They're thirsty, but they've just had the best day of their lives, right? Like you wouldn't believe how much I got done today, right? So it's hyper productivity, but hyper pleasurable at the same time. And it's a skill set. You can learn how to do this.
Can you guide us how to be in a flow state? What practices do we need to do?
Yeah, look, you need to be able to bring your brain down from about 24 hertz, which is where it is now, somewhere between 24 and 30, down to about 8 hertz, which is the borderline between relaxation and dreaming. And then
delta state?
Theta, between alpha and theta.
Okay.
So at that state, then you can start to slip into flow. Your brain becomes more relaxed, your prefrontal cortex shuts down, and then suddenly you gamify everything that's going on. And so I think the real key is to make sure that you're doing something that's just a little bit challenging, but not so challenging that it's difficult, right? Hard, but not difficult, because difficult is distracting. Hard is exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. And something that requires just enough skill that you have the skill, but you might have to learn something in order to get it done. So that challenge skill balance, where it requires all of your skill. Maybe you have to learn something new while you're doing it, and it's challenging, but not so challenging that it's difficult, right? So that maintaining that balance is really important. And then I have a ritual, and I teach executives how to build a ritual for getting into a flow state. And what it does is it just signals to my brain, hey, we're about to get this really cool, awesome, addictive, pleasurable brain cocktail. Position yourself, because once you've figured out how to get into flow and you know the activities that you can do in flow, your brain helps you to get back there because it loves it. I spend probably about 60% of my workday in flow, and I do a lot of my writing in flow, and it's a subject of my next book. So my recommendation is find a place where you can slow your brain down, manage your environment, and experiment with different kinds of environmental factors. For me, I need a certain level of ambient chaos, both visually and in my audio field. So a cafe works well for me because there's a whole bunch of people moving around. So it's interesting for my brain, but not so interesting that it's distracting. And there's a lot of people talking, but they're not talking to me or about me. So it's interesting to my brain, but not so interesting that it's distracting. You know what I mean? So with that level of ambient chaos, I can look at my screen and I can write for hours and totally lose track of myself.
I think it's opposite for me.
You need it quiet.
Yeah.
So I've got other executives that I was talking to one of my executive coaching clients last night. We were working through his ritual for how to get into flow. And we were talking about levels of ambient chaos. And we figured out that a low level of rhythmic music, very low level, is what he needs in his auditory field. But then his visual field can't be moving at all. And the other thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take this thing, silence it, not just silence it, but it has to be outside of your visual field. Okay? Because whatever is in your visual field, your brain recognizes and sees it. Even if you're not conscious of it, your brain knows it's there. So get it outside of your visual field and mute it, and you'll have a lot easier time slipping into a flow state.
That's a good point, not to have in your visual field. Yeah, very, very nice. So our last question, and that's I think the concept of the book is around physical fitness. So tell us, what role does physical fitness play in being a Spartan CEO?
Look, I think for us to understand how much we're capable of and for us to be high performing, whether that means fast or just efficient, okay? Because there's different definitions of high performing. We have to take what I call a biopsychosocial approach. Bio, meaning body, psycho, meaning mind, social, environment. We are biopsychosocial organisms. And so we are the product of our environment, our mental state, and our physical state. If your body is tired, it's going to bring your brain down. If your environment is chaotic, it's going to be difficult to concentrate. Right? If your mind is distracted, you're not going to be able to do what you need to do with your body. So they all play a role together, and we have to take all three of them into consideration.
I think I would like to add the spiritual aspect as well.
I agree with you. Yeah, there's 30 years of research on spirituality and management, and I've done a good deal of reading on that as well. And I think starting with Abraham's hierarchy of needs and the self-actualization, we all have that opportunity to find that position on the planet where we know, not every single day, but we know from time to time we're exactly where we should be. And I think that reassurance is valuable to us from a spiritual perspective. And I think it gives us a lot of courage and a lot of hope and a lot of willingness to take more risks if we've experienced that more in our lives. So I agree with you. Spirituality is, the fourth dimension. But in terms of the physical, we typically in leadership ignore the impact of physical fitness on business outcomes and firm performance. And there actually is great science and great measurable outputs of physical fitness of leaders on their firm's performance. For example, there were two different studies done of the S&P 1500 in the United States over the same decade of data. And the studies found that when you compared one to the other, that companies that are led by CEOs who regularly run a marathon are 57% more market profitable than companies who are led by a CEO who plays golf regularly. So even though golf and a marathon both take approximately 4 hours to complete, right? One of those leaders is leading a company that's 57% more profitable than the other. And what they found is that the average Tobin's Q, which is the measure of the market value of a company over its asset value, the average of the S&P 1500 is exceeded considerably by those companies whose CEOs run marathons regularly. And those companies whose CEOs play golf regularly perform considerably poorer than the average in terms of their market valuation over their asset value. So,
and I think it has an impact on brain, your
100%
active mindset.
Yeah.
It makes an active mindset, your physical fitness.
Yeah, I've seen it too. And look, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that a CEO who can run a marathon can outlast his opponent in the boardroom, right? That it takes effort to run a marathon, because after the first hour, you realize you've still got a couple of hours to go. And it's like, wow, that's a long run. You're sitting there in the boardroom. And if you have one negotiator who doesn't run marathons and another one who does, the marathon runner just has to sit there and mentally discipline themselves because they've got that training. They know how to do it. They know how to concentrate on one thing for hours. Okay, they can do it. Whereas the golfer, you don't have to be very fit to golf, do you? There's usually a couple of beers involved in the play. If not during the game, then definitely after the game. You can play it slowly. You don't have to be in great physical condition. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of concentration for a long period of time in order to play a game of golf. That's not difficult. It's more of a leisurely game. So there's 4 hours of leisure in one sport and 4 hours of concentration in another. And I think that's the big differentiator. What we don't know is whether, the cart comes before the horse. We don't know if high-performing companies tend to hire marathon running CEOs, or if low performing, or if high performing CEOs tend to create high performing companies. We just know that there's a statistical correlation between the kind of fit that your CEO is and the kind of performance that comes out of that company.
Awesome. So what advice would you give for people like me who have skipped the Spartan workouts?
Well, I put those in there just to remind people that well, look, for each of those pillars, I've written a workout just to remind people that you are a body as well, right? We can't neglect this machine. It is an amazingly complex piece of work, right? And it's capable of digesting incredible range of things and turning it into energy.
Mhm.
It's incredible. It's capable of storing an incredible amount of energy for rainy days, and it's capable of doing things that we would not believe that it was capable of doing. Like every year every Olympics there's a new world record, and that's because we're still pushing the boundaries of what the human body is capable of. So I think we don't respect enough the capacity of this machine, and we don't respect enough the influence that the health of this machine has on the health and function of this machine, right? If your cardio is not performing well, then mentally you're not getting as much oxygen as you could have in your brain. Your brain won't perform well as if you're not drinking enough water. Your brain consumes calories and water. If you don't have the right kinds of calories in your body, your brain is going to stop functioning well. And if you don't have enough water in your body, your brain is going to stop functioning well. So you have to take care of the machine in order for this to function well.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Corrie, for
My
sharing
pleasure.
your insights. It was wonderful. I'm sure the audience had found a lot of value in our conversation. It was so much enlightening, so much learning that we collected today. Thank you for being here. And interestingly enough, the last few pages I haven't read them because as a book lovers would relate to it that they don't want to end a book quickly. So I've read 3-4 pages so that I do not lose the connection. But this book is amazing. Every person who's looking for growth should and learning should read this.
Thank
book.
you so much.
Thank you for your efforts for sharing this.
Thank you.
Knowledge. Thank you for watching us. Signing off. Soulfully Yours, Umer and Singh.